The Milwaukee Bucks, a little bit disappointing how they finished out the year getting beaten the first round by the Miami Heat, but in my opinion, they are nowhere near being finished. Rather than rebuilding, they could just reload a little bit. And while it might be difficult with the new collective bargaining agreement, a few minor things they could do and they could be right back in it. Explaining that new collective bargaining agreement a little bit here though, it might be difficult for them to stay under the luxury tax apron. If you have no idea what that means, I'll explain it quickly here. The new luxury tax aprons will be a little bit difficult for tax-paying teams to wiggle around. The first apron, which is known as the hard cap, is set at $169 million for the upcoming year. The second apron, however, which will come with more issues per se, is set at $179 million. And if you cross that, you will not have the ability to spend your mid-level exception, either the taxpayer or non-taxpayer mid-level exception. You will not have the biannual exception, nor will you be able to sign buyout players during the middle of the year. And that could be an issue for the Milwaukee Bucks if they keep Chris Middleton, if they bring back Brook Lopez, and depending on how they fill out their team. That will be the issue with them. The interesting part will be, of course, how they navigate it. And we're going to talk about 5 free agents that can help them do that for a fairly cheap price. And whether or not they cross that second tax apron, I think they could get a majority of these guys for either a minimum contract or around the taxpayer mid-level exception if they stay under that second tax apron. A little bit complicated, but we'll get into it here. So coming in at number 5 for me, I got Thomas Bryant. A great floor spacing big, he shot 44.1% from 3 this season, and while he did get traded during the middle of the year to Denver and fell out of the rotation very quickly due to his defense, I think he would fit in pretty well with Milwaukee. Whether or not they lose Brook Lopez, which I think they'll bring him back, it might be a little bit difficult again, but Thomas Bryant could be a great backup behind him. He doesn't provide the defense that Brook Lopez does, but he can kind of replicate the three-point shooting. Great three-point shooter like I mentioned before. A really good rebounder. Grabbed about 11.3 rebounds per game per 36-minute average. And like I said, he'd be a great backup behind Brook Lopez when he sits out, if he gets hurt, or if they would unfortunately lose him.
Yeah, I mean, Thomas Bryant would just be a solid backup, like you say, to Brook Lopez for any situation, even if Brook wants to sit a game, rest a game. Thomas Bryant, he's a solid big man in the center there. He can get boards, he can get a couple buckets, sort of replicate that three-point percentage, but he's going to be a great pickup for the Bucks if they would ever go that way, and especially for that minimum contract.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And while I'm saying if he could replace Brook Lopez, obviously it wouldn't be a one-on-one replacement. I would call Brook Lopez my number 1 priority for them this offseason, depending on what they do with Chris Middleton, have you. But yeah, Thomas Bryant could be a good potential backup for him. But coming in at number 4, I got Josh Okogie. Maybe not a guy you expected here, but another value free agent they could look to add. Great defender, better than Grayson Allen for perimeter defense and for situations where they need a more reliable guard or wing defender. That was a little bit difficult for him in the playoffs, and a guy like Okogie could help make up for that. He is incredibly disruptive on defense. He would likely become their best defender immediately after joining them, not overall defender, but best perimeter defender, and give them a player similar to what they had Wesley Matthews back in the day before he kind of unfortunately fell off. And along with that, he showed improvement as a three-point shooter. He shot a career-high 33.5% this season. Not great, but he's obviously getting better, and he went through a month stretch back in February where he shot nearly 47% for 3. If they could get him for a minimum contract, I think that would be incredible value.
Yeah, 100%. Josh Okogie, he, coming from a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, he offers a great defensive mindset and a great attitude. He hustles hard, and that's kind of what any team needs. That would definitely complement the Bucks' defensive presence that they already kind of have established. And like you say, he doesn't have the best three-point percentage, but that improvement's coming. He's still young. He's still 24 years old. He's going to be 25 by the time the season starts next. But his career three-point percentage is 29%, and he got a 4% jump to 33.5 this last season. So it just takes improvement over time, and he's still young, and I think he'd be a great pickup for a minimum.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we kind of forget how young he is yet. Off the top of my head, before I looked into it anyway, I kind of thought he was about 26, 27 at this point. I think he definitely has room to get better. He's already a great defender. If he could turn into a legit 3-and-D player, getting him for a minimum contract again would be an absolute bargain. But now moving on to number 3. And here we have another 3-and-D bargain free agent in Troy Brown Jr. A solid wing defender who can match up 1 through 4 at times, and coming from a Laker fan, he really put in a lot of effort this year. He's not always the best individual defender, but he will always give you effort. He's a pretty reliable guy no matter what, and then he improved as a 3-point shooter too. Up until this point, he had only shot above 35% one time in his 4-year career, but he shot 38.1% with the Lakers overall, and 40.5% on corner threes. And that's always reliable with a team like the Milwaukee Bucks, where you have guys like Giannis attacking the paint, kicking out to a corner 3-point shooter. He'd be a great fit for their offense. In addition to that, he could be a great, cheap replacement for Jay Crowder if they let him walk, and I think they probably will. I mean, new coach, new system a little bit potentially. Maybe they could convince him to come back, but the way they ended off in Jay Crowder's final comments, I kind of don't picture him coming back. Overall though, I think he'd be a great bargain for a minimum contract.
Yeah, 100%. Just having that extra shooting on the side. Again, minimum contract, you can't go wrong with that. But the comments with Jay Crowder, I can't see him coming back, especially with the new coach, especially with kind of the drama. I can't see it happening. I think he'd be a great replacement for him, almost identical in that sense, just not probably as big. But again, another young guy, lots of room to improve. Saw significant improvement in the field goal 3-point percentage and field goal overall. I think he'd be a great pickup at a minimum. I think one thing we forget about a lot in this kind of development time for players is this is the time where they're kind of starting to get into the swing of the NBA. They're starting to get the routine. They're starting to get the distance. They're starting to get kind of just the movement and the flow of the game down. If you can lock down a player for a minimum or a close to minimum contract while they're going through these good development, you could maybe see a break in a year, like a big breakout year for somebody, and you're getting a huge bargain for what you're doing. And I think that's one thing to look for in Troy Brown Jr.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That could apply a little bit to Josh Okogie too. I wouldn't doubt if Phoenix retained him, not to go back and back to number 4 here, but that's kind of it's a good age to keep around a guy at a cheap price, keep him around for multiple years, show steady improvement over time. And I think Troy Brown Jr. has been doing that. If they get him for a minimum contract, lock him up maybe after this year for a little bit longer, if he shows more improvement, he could be a great guy to grow and be a steady role player for them with Giannis for years to come. But now moving on to number 2, and it might shock you, but here I have Yuta Watanabe. He shot great from 3 this year. I think we kind of actually overlook it. He shot 44.4% from 3 overall and 51.4% on corner threes. That nearly led the entire league, and before Brooklyn traded for, they made the trade with Dallas, that 3-team trade, acquired a ton of wing depth, Mikal Bridges, Dorian Finney-Smith. That unfortunately pushed Watanabe out of their rotation, but up until that point, he was, I would argue, their most reliable wing player, especially when it came to 3-point shooting. He was great to have in the corner when Kevin Durant would kick it out, Kyrie Irving would kick it out to him. I think that would fit in great in the Bucks system. Even though Adrian Griffin might be a little bit different with their offense, I think he'd be a great fit for them no matter what. You're going to have Giannis attacking the rim, kickouts from him, Jrue Holiday as well. And another thing, the Milwaukee Bucks, they don't have very many bigger wing players right now. If they trade Middleton, or if he would, for whatever reason, opt out of his contract and he goes somewhere else, they wouldn't have him. They're probably losing Jay Crowder, and probably Joe Ingles too. After that, their wing players are pretty small. They got Grace Snellen at 6'4", Wesley Matthews a free agent. They just all around don't have a lot of wing depth right now. Watanabe might not be a great defender, but he's solid, he's average, he's not a liability on defense. He won't hurt you in that regard. He'd give them great height at 6'9". He can play either the 3 or 4. I just think he'd be a great fit for their team, provide a lot of 3-point shooting for them, a lot of reliability.
Yeah, I think it's great that you touched on that because, Chris, Joe, Wesley, and even Jay Crowder, like we talked about, they're not lock guys. Some of those guys, especially, we're probably going to see walk. I think everyone expects Chris Middleton to stay, but again, say he doesn't, and you see Joe go, you see Wesley go, you see Jay go, where's the 3-point shooting? Not to mention he's 6'9". Who are you going to put out on that? Who are you going to have run out there on the into the corner? I mean, he's 6'9", he can knock it down. Great 3-point percentage shooting. I think that he's one of the better pickups for the Bucks, given a certain set of circumstances happen.
Yeah, and I think actually him falling out of the rotation in Brooklyn might actually help a team like the Bucks to be able to get him for near a minimum contract, if not a minimum contract. Everyone kind of forgot about him a little bit. I mean, if you look back, that 3-point percentage will obviously stand out, but he didn't play a lot towards the end of the year. I don't think he played like at all here in the playoffs for them in round 1, but everyone kind of forgot about him, and that could help a contending team, if he wants to join one, sign him for another bargain contract. But now moving on to number 1, and here we have Jalen McDaniels. Not Jaden, we got Jalen, his older brother, and while he's not Jaden McDaniels, not the talent that he is, he'd be a really good 3-and-D player for them. I think he would immediately become their best bigger wing defender, not counting Giannis anyway. Jalen can defend positions 1 through 4, be a big upgrade over what they currently have for small forward and power forward defenders. Even if they would bring back Jay Crowder, which again I don't think they will, I think Jalen's the better overall defender over him. He's the better overall defender over Grayson Allen, and probably even Marjan Beauchamp at this point too. He's developing, getting better, but Jalen McDaniels would be a great defensive pickup for them. And I mean, imagine a lineup of 7-foot Brook Lopez, given they bring him back, 6'11" Giannis, and 6'9" Jaden McDaniels in the front court, and then having Drew Holiday at the point of attack. That would be a deadly defensive lineup, and I would love to see that happen in real time. And along with that, he's a pretty good 3-point shooter, not great, but getting better. He shot 38% from 3 last year, and then he shot 40% to finish out this year after being traded to Philadelphia. Not great, but good enough to be a 3-and-D guy, which they need more of. Along with that, he's a really good fast break up-tempo guy, and as you know with Milwaukee, they love to play that way. Drew Holiday wreaking havoc on the perimeter, Giannis pushing the pace after grabbing a rebound, you'd have Jalen McDaniels running from the wing, and that would just be a great fit in transition for them. He would be the guy, if they do have the tax pyramid level exception at about $5 million, I would throw it at him and try to pry him away from Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 100%. You think about the defensive, I guess, titans that you'd have in the Bucks if this lineup. It'd be scary. It'd be hard to see any team even really plan for it. I'd be interested to see, how the best offensive teams can plan for it. But yeah, I mean, you just see the fast-paced push nonstop with Drew, Jalen, and Giannis. I mean, the pace would be nonstop. It'd be a great example of good defense leads into good offense. And I think, maybe a minimum might be hard to get, but I think definitely close to a minimum will definitely be doable for him. And I think that'd be a great pickup for the Bucks.
Yeah, I agree. He's my number 1 guy for them for a reason. A very realistic pick in my opinion. If they have the tax pyramid level, I'd throw it at him. If they could somehow get him for a minimum, I doubt they will, because I think Philly would offer that to him too, if not maybe a little bit more. But I think he'd be a great fit for them. They don't have that type of player right now. Chris Middleton kind of was that for them, that taller, lanky wing defender, but with him coming off of multiple injuries, he's just really not that guy for them anymore in terms of defense. He's still a very efficient offensive player, but they can't rely on him to defend the best or second best perimeter guy or wing guy on the court anymore. And I think Jalen McDaniels would help fill that void, whether or not they keep Chris Middleton. But all around, I think he'd be a great fit for them. To wrap everything up here though, those would be my top 5 free agents for the Bucks that are not their own free agents. In regard to that though, I would still put Brook Lopez and Javon Carter above any of these 5. They might not have a lot of wiggle room under the tax apron like I mentioned before, but if they can somehow make it work, getting back Brook Lopez and of course Javon Carter too, who I believe is very underrated, they definitely should do that before signing anybody else. I don't think the Bucks are anywhere near being finished yet, and with a little, touching around the edges here, maybe picking up a few bargain free agents like I mentioned before, along with retaining their own free agents, or a majority of them anyways, I think they could be right back at the top.